Good morning, everyone. This is Nathaniel Lee. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining our weekly show. We have so many things that are important that are going on each day. I was looking today, there was like 100 and some odd lawsuits filed against the Trump administration. But to discuss these important legal issues today, I have Milton Grimes and Marlon Primes and some experts to help me along the way because there's just so many issues. Uh, it's almost like I'm having legal whiplash just trying to keep track of these cases. Marlon, have you been able to track these 119 lawsuits that have been filed? And I mean, just crazy stuff. It's almost like there's no boundaries anymore.
Yes, I mean the federal judiciary is our last line of defense, and we have a lot of the Democratic attorney generals in various states that are filing litigation, and we have unions filing litigation as well. So they involve a variety of issues. Number one, there was a mass termination of probationary employees, and as one of the federal judges indicated, that federal employees, even the probationary employees, aren't at will employees. They do have some rights, and you have to provide proper notice. It has to come from the right parties. And so there have been, ruling that those many of those terminations were improper, especially given the fact that the government basically had a cookie cutter letter saying that it's for performance issues, and come to find out, a lot of these individuals, received good evaluations. So, those are one group of lawsuits that are being filed. And the other issues are regarding separation of powers. No matter how much a president wants to put his imprimatur on, policies and procedures that will last when they leave office, they have to follow the Constitution. So if the Congress, for example, passes legislation that, creates a federal agency or a federal statute, the president alone isn't going to be able to unwind that. You have to go through the democratic process. You have to go through the legislative process. So those are among the issues that will have to be sorted out. Preliminarily, the district court judges have been very, very critical of President Trump. We'll see what happens when it goes to the federal appellate level and also the U.S. Supreme Court.
Well, the thing I'm concerned about, though, is that the world's richest man is spending money like crazy. And I see that he spent $6 million, for example, to support a candidate for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And their goal, of course, is try to destroy the electoral process in Wisconsin by creating a process where the average citizen voice is not properly heard. And he spent 300 million in the last election where they basically spent crazy money in targeted state. It was very successful, even offered to pay people money. And then now the same person is offering to give the president of the United States, something like he's bought the president, $100 million is campaign coffers, which make no sense. It seemed like to me, these are almost like bribes and stuff right before our very own eyes. This is crazy stuff.
Your eyes must be lying to you because he could not have the audacity to be bribing the president of the United States, could he?
Well, I mean, therein lies the problem. We have these laws and procedures in place for a reason. And, it's because there have been so many abuses. If you look at the expression to the victor goes the spoils, that basically came from patronage jobs in the last century, where a president could come in and they could basically wipe out everybody from the janitors on all the way up. And so people thought that, hey, this is not the best way of doing business. For the reasons that Milton described, it looks unseemly, it looks like a bribe. So from the Pendleton Act, then you have the Civil Service Reform Act, which basically means that supervisors can change, but you can't basically fire everybody that's a federal employee, because we want some stability. And in presidential years, We want individuals to be doing the people's business as opposed to looking for a job because they're anticipating they're going to be fired by the next administration. And the problem with, Elon Musk is that he hasn't gone through this vetting process, this conflict of interest process, to see if he has conflicts. And that's really important why we've established a federal workforce. I mean, this guy is basically, saying, hey, look, I'm in charge of all fraud, waste, and abuse. Come to find out, he has, millions and billions of contracts with the United States. So how can you supervise yourself to see if there's fraud? So it's just very unseemly. I think Milton is right, and I think you're right as well, Nathaniel.
Well, he comes from a country that they had a few problems, racial problems and dictatorial problems and behavior. And it seems like he's just taken the attitude that he can come over here and pretty much dictate through the presidency what the government is going to do with his people. I just don't think the people are going to stand by for this type of an assault for very long without some type of rebellion. What form it comes in, I don't know, but I'm hearing families they're talking about dismantling the education department, something that Congress created. The president doesn't have the authority to do that. So, but I'm looking at, I did a case some years ago dealing with right to life. A young child was born with spinal bifida and hydrocephalus, spine sticking out through its back just above the buttocks. And that was a terrible thing to witness. This child was 4 years old when we finally went to trial. But I'm just thinking about the parents of this child, if this child is still alive. This was maybe 10, 15 years ago. And the care that they need to just on a daily basis to take care of this child now. People who are in that position, it must be a terrible fear to have all of the aid taken away that children who have disabilities or adults who have disabilities depend on this country for. I don't know if I would want to go through that.
Well, what is occurring, because I want to clear the record on this so everybody get a clear understanding. Terrorist is not a tax on foreign government. Terrorist is a tax on American citizens who buy those products. So the cost of the tariffs is passed on to American consumers. So we impose a 25% tax on tariffs on China goods. Well, Walmart obtain their goods primarily from China. So what will occur is that Walmart will have to get a better deal with China to lower the price, the ridiculous low price already for their goods, or Walmart would have to pass the tax costs on to consumers, which means that Walmart products are going to go up by about 25%. And the problem is that this tariff would likely lead to a significant recession because there's a trade war we started with Europe, Canada, Mexico, and I mean, this whole thing is inconsistent. Each day when we see an announcement from the White House, it seems like it's a bowling ball. It's just rolling in direction and there's no constraints. And so it changes day by day. The net result is the idea of sporadic imposition of tariffs, including, excluding, increasing, decreasing, and led to a massive decline in the stock market. So all those folks who voted in the last election was thinking that they would, their 401ks would be protected. Well, they're waking up today with a dramatic decline in their investment, dramatic. And so the point is that tariffs will likely have some effect, and the experts say that the tariffs will likely lead to a recession. And because of that, the question is that what do you do as a consumer? What can you do to protect yourself when the stock market is crashing and things like that? Well, off the top though, for the folks who are interested, they have these index funds and things like that, give you some protection. But by and large, I don't think that we're going to get a lot of growth in the stock market with these crazy adventures in terms of tariffs. I don't know how it's affecting people in your neighborhood and stuff like that, but I see a lot of anxieties for the people I run across now.
That's what I was trying to say about the healthcare, Nate. I hear a lot of anxiety from people about what's going to happen with Social Security and medical care and jobs. I saw a presentation that Ronald Reagan read off about tariffs and how it affects a society, and ultimately leads to unemployment, could lead to unemployment, mass unemployment.
Well, people have to look at, well, I'm sorry, Milton.
Go ahead.
Yeah. But people have to understand that the United States is a small population as it relates to the rest of the world. I believe we're like 4% of the world's entire population. And so you're not going to be able to survive just by buying and selling goods to yourself. You have to have markets, overseas, that helps everybody. And I think you all are absolutely right. When you put those tariffs up, especially, with people on our own continent who we, do so much trading with in terms of Canada and Mexico, it just doesn't make any sense to believe that that's not going to impact the common person. It's going to impact you in terms of prices, as Nathaniel and Milton indicated, whether it's Walmart or wherever you shop, because you're right, a lot of those goods do come from China. So all they're going to do is jack up, increase their prices, and that's going to impact other people. The other part of that is that the social safety net is important. We went through this, my parents' generation, my mom and dad were born in the 30s, and a lot of that legislation came out for a reason. You had, Hooverville in Central Park, named after President Hoover, because there's so many people that were homeless and destitute. They had tent cities and villages, and they called it Hooverville. And so, when FDR came into office, he says, I better get it right, because otherwise I could be the last president of the United States. So a lot of this social safety net in terms of, the National Labor Relations Board, the ability to unionize, Social Security, so people that are elderly, don't have to have a source of income. All that was for a very good reason. And if we forget about the reason why we have this social safety net, we'll return to those days of the Hoover blankets and the Hooverville if we're not careful.
Yep.
Wow. Well, rolling into the next subject. A lot of people, we talked earlier about the DEI attack, affirmative action, but now we're seeing some dramatic effect. I noticed that Harvard admitted 656 students. In the prior class, they had 57 Blacks. This class, about 16 or 17. So now we're seeing the effects of these decisions. It's almost like, I hate to say this, but we're going back to the days of Jim Crow. I mean, now they're attacking, they sent letters threatening college universities about diversity and inclusion and things like that. But in reality, what they're actually attacking is things that give people equal access to higher education. And so the Trump administration threatened the American Bar Association about their stance on diversity and inclusion. Now, the legal profession was the last profession that I'm aware of that desegregated. I mean, it's not like the law firms had open arms for African Americans their whole life. I mean, when I started practicing many years ago, our firms were segregated. Milton, Marlin. I mean, I'm not sure what it was in your neck of the wood, but that's the way it was in our law firms in our state. We did a massive effort in 1987 to desegregate. So now we have the college and universities now pulling back and admitting so few African Americans, like Indiana University. Last year, instead of your regular class of 30 to 40, they admitted one Black law student, just one. So our state largest university, Indiana University, admitted one Black law student. And I would think that most people are not aware of the severity of these laws and how it's going to affect their futures.
Do you know the admission rate in the prior years for any period of time?
Yeah, they had admitted, I think it was 27 or so the year before, and only one this academic year. Wait a second. We have a caller on the phone. Hold on a second.
The caller's on the
That
line.
is a significant decline in admission, one that should make all of us a little concerned.
Okay, we have one caller. Caller, you have a comment, a question for us today. Go ahead.
This is Pierre. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, Pierre. What's up today?
Oh, well, good morning, everybody. I just wanted to weigh in on a couple of legal things that happened. One of the most significant or things that have been in the paper this year. Wanted to get you guys' opinion on the Arab student that was arrested. His green card, I guess his green card is being revoked. I wanted to get the attorney who formerly worked for the Justice Department's opinion on that. What you think about that? Can they do that if you're a legal green card holder and resident in the United States? Nobody's really. I noticed the Black media is not really, talking about that, even though that's another gross violation of folks' rights. I'm a big Israel supporter, but I don't know about that. And the other thing, I just wanted to tell Milton, I'm keeping an eye on that lawsuit that your colleagues filed out there in L.A. with respect to the Laurel Canyon fire. I think that the Douglas Hicks law firm is suing the electric company out there. So we're going to keep an eye on that. But just wanted to get your opinion on that subject about the guy, the kid getting arrested and his green card pulled.
You're talking about Mr. K. Hill at Columbia?
Correct. He's a kid from Columbia.
Yeah.
Yeah, from Columbia.
Yeah. He basically was a graduate student at Columbia University in New York City. And apparently, he was involved in some protests as it relates to, the things that are going on in Gaza. And so as a consequence, President Trump basically indicated he was going to get tough. And what they basically have done is they've taken $400 million in grants from Columbia University as kind of retaliation, because they didn't think they were doing enough to quell the protests. And now this young man basically was arrested for allegedly leading these protests. And there are a number of people that are defending him in the media and in court. And they're indicating that, hey, look, he was not involved in any terrorism activities or criminal activities. He was basically exercising his First Amendment right. Now, I know, some of my Jewish friends, have a different perspective. And, I had a conversation with a close friend of mine, and I think their perspective is, hey, look, if someone, said something about the whole continent of Africa, would you be concerned? And I said, well, hey, my response is, yeah, I would be concerned, but I don't think that would be the basis for, deporting someone unless you can demonstrate they committed a crime. So I think it will be interesting to see how this case will proceed through the legal system. I think preliminary indications from the comments of the judge that is handling the case, indicates that he appears to be sympathetic towards, this young man's position. So we'll have to see how that progresses. And in the interim, there's been a second Columbia student that has been detained, and they're trying to deport him as well. So I think the thing that we have to understand is that we do not live in a dictatorship. The laws basically indicate that, hey, if you're engaged in criminal activity, that's one thing. But if you're merely exercising your First Amendment rights and you are just disagreeing with our government or, the Israeli government, that is not enough in and of itself. Now, if the government has some additional information in terms of him engaged in some criminality, I have not seen that. And in fact, I listened to an interview that many of you all may have heard on National Public Radio, where they interviewed a Trump official, and he really could not provide anything concrete in my mind to justify the action that's being taken. So I don't really see a lot there to justify what's happened. We'll have to see how this case winds its way through court.
Let
But
me
it's
add
very
a
unusual
little
when answering
something
your
on
question.
to what, I'm sorry, Marlon, you finished? Yeah, I'm gonna add a little something on this. I was in the library this week, believe it or not, and spent a couple of hours reading different papers. What I gathered from that is that they cut back 250 million of the 400 million that they had allotted to Columbia for their funds. He's not charged with any crime. Let me just interject. Trump called Schumer, the congressman from New York, a Palestinian 2 days ago. He just changed his ethnicity. He said he's a Palestinian because he doesn't readily support Trump's position. The administration has moved to deport this person because the Secretary of State has the power to deport. And it quotes, the reason for it says, has reason and grounds to believe the person's presence could have, quote, serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the U.S. Doesn't have to be a crime. Doesn't have to be a crime that give them the power to deport. Thankfully, this federal judge has stayed the deportation of this man until a hearing Wednesday in Louisiana. But that's a very vague, to me, phrase to use to take someone's freedom or to deport them from this country. Serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the U.S. That's all they need to argue.
Hey, gentlemen and audience, I had a really lively discussion about this issue this week at a political fundraiser in which I hosted. And it had to do with the fact that, well, I get straight to the point. I did not like the idea in the last election where the Palestinian broke and vote for Trump. They refused to vote for Harris, a large percentage. And that adversely affected the election result in 3 critical states, primarily in Pennsylvania. And you had Michigan, Pennsylvania, particularly in Michigan, that basically altered the presidential election outcome because there was a large group of people just say, we're not going to vote. And so I was thinking, why would the Palestinians think that having a Trump administration be better for them than the Harris-Walsh? And then I was talking to a gentleman who is an American citizen from Mexico. And I asked him, the same thing happened. I was seeing that the Hispanic people, 40% of the Hispanic male voted for Trump. And they thought that the illegal immigrant problem could be better handled by Trump. And what happened, of course, is that the way they handle it, they put gun in their face for these hardworking citizens, not making a distinction between Hispanic citizens versus people who are undocumented workers. And so, but he shot back at me, and I couldn't answer his question. He said, Nathaniel, why did 20% of black males vote for Trump? I was stumped.
I don't think, I mean, when you say that, it's almost like Trump saying everybody and all. You have maybe a small percentage of any group of people that will take a different approach to the way the majority of us may look at it. I'm not sure that the Palestinian vote for Trump represents a majority of the Palestinian people or a minority of the Palestinian people. I agree that it's strange that any Palestinian would vote for Trump who want to turn their homeland into a resort for himself to make more money, but I don't know the percentage of them that voted for Trump. When you look at what happened October the 7th, 2023, with Palestinians allegedly killing 1,200 Jewish people, and then you look at the retaliation by the the Israeli people, killing over 48,000 Palestinians. I mean, I'm not trying to compare the death rate, but I understand that there's a Jim Crow existence in Gaza. You know, people can't go here, can't go there if you're not the right color, or if you're not Jewish. You know, it's wrong. It's wrong.
Well, I mean, I think a couple things. Number one, I think, President Biden, should have and could have done more. The fact of the matter is that you have a number of international bodies that are nonpartisan that said, hey, point blank, there is genocide going on,
Right.
Gaza. And, you have, South Africa, who was the lead party in bringing the case against Israel in the International Criminal Court. And, we could have done more, whether it be behind the scenes, whether or not, we curtail, the ammunition that we're sending over. And so I think there was a lot of frustration. And I think the through line, as relates to African-American men, is that, it can be attractive extremism for those that are desperate, those that are underemployed, those that don't know where their next meal is going to come from, and they're not really hearing what the plan is to get them back to work. That ear can be more receptive to these extreme views. Now, I agree with you that in the long term, it did not make any sense, for these, 20%, if the statistics are right, of African-American men supporting Trump, because I think in the long term, he's not going to do anything for you, as well as the Palestinians. But I empathize with them in the sense that there's a sense of desperation. And if you look at the history, of the last century and even this century, despotism and totalitarianism, a lot of that starts when you have a desperate population. People are willing to give up rights. It happened in Germany. It happened in other parts of the world. So I don't condemn my brothers that look for that. I think it's our role to try to find a way of making sure that what they're looking for, the message they're looking for, the assistance they're looking for, that they're getting that, or at least they're speaking to those particular issues.
Well, here's my concern, the obvious thing that everybody overlooked. That was a terrible tragedy when Israel was invaded and people murdered. I thought it was 1,600, but America has a clear record on what they do when people attack our country. And we look no further than what happened to Japan when they attacked Pearl Harbor. And we didn't retaliate by just killing the military. We dropped atomic bombs to wipe out the whole country.
Right,
as many people as possible, women, children,
right.
elderly, sick, house, it doesn't matter. We killed everybody in sight with those atomic bombs and with effective generation. And so when I was thinking about this, what would America have done if they had attacked America? Well, we know what America would have done. They wouldn't have stopped killing 48,000. They would have wiped out the whole country. And that's the way that our country has responded. And so, and so that's why I had a problem with it. I was thinking that they need to look at the history of America and see how American military responded to these attacks.
Well, isn't that what Israel did? They bombed the hell out of the Gaza area and they killed 48,000 Palestinians in retaliation for October the 7th killing of whether it's 1,200 or 1,600. I'm not trying to compare it, but shoot, guys. From what I recently read, it's like the old South Jim Crow law. I mean, if you can't get on the bus, you got to sit in the back of the bus. They have no rights over there, the Palestinians in their homeland.
Well, I agree with you that, certainly Israel had the right to defend themselves. United States, when they were attacked at Pearl Harbor, has defended themselves. When we were attacked on 9/11, we defended ourselves. I think the only point that's being raised is that, there are rules of combat, and those rules are, enunciated in the Geneva Convention, and you cannot use food and water as a vehicle to collectively punish an entire population of people. So that's why you've had, so many international bodies. That's why you had so many countries say, wait a minute, you can defend yourself, but this is the bridge too far. And my only point is that, I recognize that, hey, this was one of the worst things that happened to the Jewish people since the Holocaust in terms of the number of Jewish lives. But I think, the legitimate criticism in my view is that, yeah, you can defend yourself, but you have to follow recognized law in doing so. And I think many of us would probably say the same thing as it relates to the United States, in responding to 9/11, Afghanistan, wherever we went subsequently, we still have to, respect the rules of law. Because the point of the Geneva Convention is that, hey, you want to adhere to that because, hey, what if your soldiers get captured? What if, that occurs and you want there to be a baseline in terms of how people are treated? And if you go south of that, then you put your whole community at risk, is my point.
Yeah.
But I certainly empathize and I agree. I just want to reiterate that you do have the right to defend yourself, but at the same token, you should comply with international laws, my point.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, in the totality of circumstances, I don't think there's a lot of justification for the bombing of an area that includes civilians and women and children.
We have a caller on the line.
Okay, caller, you have a question or comment for us today?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, how you doing? Brother Nate, your guest, Mr. Grimes, and the other gentleman. Sorry, I can't remember your name, but I will get it. I've watched you about 3 weeks. I'll get Brother Imhotep up here. And Milton, I'm on you on the other side. You all don't want to hear I'm a United States veteran, so I know of the Air Force. So 9/11 was a lie. We know that. First, it was weapons of mass destruction. When they got in there, Iraq, they never found one. They never found even a trigger. Then it went to nation building. Then it went to, as most of us know, those Kurdish oil fields. Let's just come on now. Let's be honest. Trump said what they actually want to do. They want the land for profit. This country is about taking raw materials. And look at Ukraine. What was the deal with Ukraine? You give us your raw, your precious metals, and we'll protect you. This country has always exploited countries for their raw material and their resources. That's just the way it's been. Let's not go this. I have a minor in political science. Let's be honest now. Let's be honest what they do. Israel, the Balfour Agreement. Me and my mother talked about this for weeks. We're gonna mention the Balfour Agreement. You're gonna overlook the Balfour Agreement. You can't overlook that now. When you speak on this, what's going on here? They carved out this land and gave it to them. When we know that most of these are Eastern Europeans, from Czechoslovakia, Poland, Russian, Khazarian Jews, Ashkenazi Jews. I don't want to go there now. Let's not go there. This is a lot of wrong here. They didn't have the right. Sometimes the enemy of my enemy is my friend, unless the enemy of my friend is my enemy. Okay, so you keep beating up on people and over and over and over and over and over again. And then the smallest people try to rise up, and then yet since they control the media and everybody controls the power of the mind control, then they get looked as being bad. Sometimes it's the same thing with black people. Look at the 60s, look at the 50s, look at the bombing of the Birmingham church, look at Medgar Evers being killed, look at all the folks that just tried to do King, Malcolm X, look at all the folks that just tried to do right, and yet J. Edgar Hoover said, and with a campaign, we're going to smear these people and make them look bad. When King got killed, they had a poll come out a week before that. Martin Luther King was the most hated man in America. He never hurt anybody. He never stole from anyone. He never robbed anybody. Why was he the most hated man in America? That's the way they turn things around. We got to be careful when we look at those who are being degraded. And then when they try to fight for themselves, then a larger force pushes them down, and then we say, okay, with a larger force, you got the right to beat these people down when you've already been beating them down. They're trying to get you off of them. Got to turn it around. I want to go back to the Ukraine and the Putin thing. Putin just came out and said now he's not for the deal. This is the same situation you're just talking about. Trump made Zelensky look like he was the problem. He turned it around on Zelensky. Okay, Zelensky goes over with Rubio in Saudi Arabia this week. He comes over the framework, says, I agree on a ceasefire with these terms. But Putin has to abide by these terms. Putin gets it, says, no, I don't want to abide by it. Now what? Zelensky was turned around. Look at all the media, except for a few journalists here in this country, the mainstream media turned it to where Zelensky was disrespectful to Trump. When we all know what happened, Trump just blamed Crimea on Obama. So we got to really be careful how we are spinning these messages on people who are being assailed. And the fact remains, we are being assailed. And we have folks that got mad because black people were going to boycott Target, saying, well, worry about these people who selling here, when the very leadership of Target never came out and say, you know what, maybe we'll support you all. We're wrong. We went back on our agreement. Then that's why Target's lost $17 billion since then. And it's not just us, because we're not the majority minority anymore. Latinos, the Latinx community is the majority minority. And white and the LGBTQ community didn't like it because they turned their backs on them too. So we got to get out of thinking that when black folks, okay, we're going to do this and the third, it's just on us. You don't lose $17 billion just because of us boycotting. You've got a whole lot of other people. That's why Tesla has the problems that they're having. It's not because of us. It's because of a whole lot of other people. So I just want to throw that out there so you all make sure we understand what we're up against from a world perspective. China just come out and said, hey, you're going to do this, then we're going to do this. We're going to go up 200% on everything. When might only respects might, and this Caucasian male has been able to get away because he's had might, but might now in other forms is coming back and trying to get their freedom and liberty in different manners. So just want to throw it out there. Thanks for my call.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that was a whole lot, but the main thing from that, I tell you, I'm really in favor of making sure that nobody buy anything from Tesla, because I have a problem with a person from a foreign country running the United States of America. I think it's fundamentally wrong. Okay, Carl, you have a question coming for us today. Go ahead. Hello.
Hi, good morning. I have a question and then maybe a slight comment. So we understand that Trump's whole idea is to create a bunch of chaos. So is Elon. That's their whole idea. I don't know what their end goal is, but I have. Can you hear me?
To make money. That's their end goal.
Right, but I get that. But right now they're tanking the market. So I'm wondering. So what I'm getting at is, they're taking the market to go in there and swoop in so they can buy everything on the cheap. I get the strategy. I get what they think they're doing. However, what they're doing is turning off the people that voted for Trump and making it more difficult for them to keep the Congress. My question is, though, to all of you, is like, what do you think the best strategy is right now to fight against that, because we're all over the place. I mean, people are concerned about this, people are concerned about that, rightly so. But I think as a citizenship, as a grassroots movement, we need to be more concise about how we're going to attack back at them. I love the fact that the courts are standing up against them. I think they're doing an amazing job. And so before I hang up and get your guys' take on what we should do to organize, because I'm trying to run, political groups where I am and trying to get people focused on what they should be concerned with, because there's no squirrel here, squirrel there, and people are just distracted by, any and everything. But I think we need to be more strategic about that. The last, before I hang up on that, the other comment I wanted to make was that that student that is being threatened to be thrown out of the country is not a terrorist. They have found no connection to any of the terrorist groups. He just expressed his opinion that, that he believes that Palestinians should not be killed in mass numbers like they are. And I think it was Attorney Grimes that mentioned that there's an act or a law that Trump is now trying to use as an excuse to throw him out. And I wanted to ask Attorney Grimes, wasn't that the same law that they used to intern the Japanese? And didn't that get resolved in the Supreme Court in a result that led to Japanese Americans getting reparations? And I'll be silent to listen to your answers.
I can't answer that exactly as that being the law that they used to intern the Japanese, but it's just a very vague law that they're trying to employ now to deport this young man. When you say what's happening, it seems to be, is it called woke, that people are beginning to be woke about what's happening more so than being complacent in the past. So it appears that this move by Trump and his new bulldog is backfiring somewhat. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that, Marlon and Nate, but these town hall meetings that Bernie Sanders and others, I don't know if Bernie is doing a town hall meeting, but town hall meetings are indicating that people are beginning to react to this situation out of fear. Bernie Sanders is doing a good job at campaigning around the country. Other people are appearing in town hall meetings that seem to be becoming anti-Trump, wherein before it was pro-Trump. So the rebellion, it seems to be taking place.
Well, I think in terms of, getting back to the whole thing about how do we respond, because, there's so many attacks from so many different places, and it's really, easy for us to kind of, spread ourselves too thin. And I think what we have to do is we have to look at history in terms of what has been successful in terms of the progressive movement. And, I think if you look at President Clinton's campaign, hey, it's the jobs. Hey, let's have a theme and let's focus. You look at FDR, hey, I'm going to put people back to work. If you're going to beat Trump, I think, we have to work on our messaging and we have to simplify our messaging. Just like, the great trial attorneys that are on the call, you have to have an elevator speech, and synthesize your message if you're going to be successful in the courtroom. And I think you're also going to have to synthesize your message if you're going to be important in politics. Bill Clinton did it. It's the jobs. FDR did it. And I think if we're going to be successful, we're going to have to kind of go back to the basics, to appeal to individuals and let them know that we're interested in terms of the bottom line. Now, in terms of, the town hall meetings, I think those are good, but I think that the challenge is going to be is that a number of us were growing up, you had 3 news stations and you had major newspapers that were primary sources of information. A lot of people don't watch that anymore. People mainly get their news, a lot of people, from TikTok or social media. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I think that, what Trump and what those, the support are trying to do is make sure that we're in the dark. So I think what we can do is enlighten people about the facts, the people that are in our individual group. I've had to talk to family members. Okay, well, hey, this is the history of this movement. It's a conservative movement. Let me talk about, how, President Reagan started his campaign in Mississippi and talking about states' rights. Let me talk about, detailing the MLK holiday. Let me talk about, Bob Jones University. So I think we have to do a better job educating people about the conservative movement, about the danger it is to our communities.
Well, the problem we're having now is that I got legal whiplash, those 119 lawsuits that's filed. It's just so many different lawsuits that are pending now until you can't keep track of this massive litigation. And the other thing I'm concerned about, and we didn't talk about this, is that the federal government averted a shutdown yesterday. And one of the things that allowed to go forward, of course, was Chuck Schumer out of New York. And I've gotten over 100 emails. There's a group that's saying that he needs to resign as the leader of the Senate. It just seemed like to me that he could have cut a better deal, because part of that continuing resolution wasn't a clean bill. They're trying to take away the rights to have specific payments made to states and stuff and give the president authority. I thought that was disastrous. We're asking for corruption when we give a president unlimited authority to allocate how funds are distributed. I didn't see that bill, but I was seeing one of the congressional person was outraged over that provision. And if that's the case, I'm thinking, what are they trying to do? Support a dictatorship?
I haven't looked at that, Nate.
Yeah, we got to be very, very careful. I mean, it doesn't take much, as people say, for democracies to die. And that's why it's really important, if you look at the words of W.B. Du Bois, a talented tenth of us, to really reach back to our communities and educate people about, hey, Project 2025, about, hey, that they're trying to eliminate the social safety net, not only as it relates to, there's been talk about limiting Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, the ability to unionize. I mean, we need to educate people about, hey, what life was really like. I mean, I talked to my parents who were born in the 30s, and some of the stories they told me about what the society was like. I think that's really important to really educate people, because if we're not careful, we'll go back to that. Now, if you look historically at it, one of the holy grail of the conservative movement has been, since FDR, to unravel the social safety net. That the NLRB, all of these legislation, the National Labor Relations Act, worker safety, bringing things back to the states. And so we got to educate people to say, hey, that wasn't a great time. Look at the people that died. There were workers. Look at the people that didn't have opportunity. So I think it's really going to be important during this time period where there's so much misinformation, using our megaphone to educate, not only on this show, but our family members, people within our individual sphere, to let them know the danger in terms of what's going on.
Hey, Milton, I made a mistake. You were giving a story about this sick child, but I forgot to mention something very relevant to that topic that I need to get back to this issue. As part of the budget, they were trying to take billions of dollars out of the federal Medicaid program and the Affordable Care Act. So the budgetary process they're engaged in will strip a lot of the funds from these important programs. Now, the reason that's important, what most people don't realize, a large percentage of America rely on Medicaid. Medicaid is a project that is administered by the state, but is funded largely by the federal government. And Medicaid, for example, provide money when you're in nursing home, extended care, when you have a loved one who's sick and shut in and have to have nurses come in. It's Medicaid that pays for those type services. So you can't get traditional health insurance for people that are really sick. As a general rule, it's very expensive. But Medicaid and Medicare, Medicaid, for most people I know, they pay very little or nothing. If they're unemployed, their Medicaid costs maybe zero, or if they're working, it may be $100 a month. But your private health insurance, I know the best plan that we got for my law firm was about $950 a month per person. So this Medicaid issue is a big deal. And I don't think most people realize how important it is. So I don't want to overlook that issue. Coupled with the fact that the Dodge or Elon Musk group, they went in and they stripped Maryland VA hospitals. They started terminating all these employees. And so I'm concerned about that because there's so much chaos. There was over 100 lawsuits filed as of Tuesday of this week for people about jobs and stuff that they improperly got fired. There's all kind of lawsuits. But the problem is they're taking away essential care. I mean, when you take away veterans, hospital employees and things like that, I mean, where do we go from here? I mean, what are they doing? Does anybody actually think this is a good idea?
No, this is crazy. I mean, the
Terrible.
VA system is, one of the largest medical systems in the country. And, I had the privilege when I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office to represent the Veterans Affairs Medical Center and travel all over the country in terms of defending cases. And, people have to understand is that, they are the leading innovator in terms of electronic medical records. A lot of your leading technologies, a lot of that started with the VA. So this is going to have an impact. And I think the reality of it is, as well, is that, we have a country, even with the good passage of Obamacare, there's still a number of people that do not have insurance. And so, that limits your ability to take jobs, that limits your ability to, support your family. And I think you raise a great point, Nate. When you get elderly, the issue now, even if you've worked in the private sector, a lot of these law firms and a lot of these businesses are saying, hey, once you reach a certain age, you're off our plan and you're on, Medicare, Medicaid. So it's going to have an impact on the, a wide swath of the population. So that's something that we really have to be careful of. We have to educate people about the impact this is going to have on our overall society.
Quite well spoken, Mr. Primes, being that I am one of those people you're talking about. I will be 80 years old in July, and it's very concerning what's going to happen.
Yeah, well, thank you for your service, Milton. I mean, you all are I can definitely say you're the greatest generation that we had. You're the ones, that generation that led us through Jim Crow, and there was no opportunity. So I think, I have nothing but the greatest respect for those that are your age, that were able to endure and persevere and still provide knowledge to the rest of us. And I think that's even a greater reason that we should be collectively concerned and outraged that, there's policies that are going to impact this greatest generation. Again, we want to, Social Security is there for a reason. Medicaid is there for a reason. If you look at the legislative history, and I think I would invite your audience to look at the legislative history as it relates to the Social Security Act, Medicare, Medicaid. They're also talking about cutting food stamps. I mean, look at the medical history of that. And it's just devastating. LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, what he did is prior to the passage of that legislation that created, food stamps and what have you, he went to what's known as Appalachia. I mean, and some of the things in the legislative history about, the poverty, not only in the inner cities, but in these particular areas. And so if we're not careful and if we're, not educating people, we could easily go back to that time period.
Yeah. I was listening to a speech by a gentleman a few days ago. I sent it to you, Nate, talking about Project 2025 being discussed back in 1970, and how Justice Powell was the author of a 6-page memo talking about minorities and women are taking over this country and how that had to be stopped. And it started the thinking of corporate America taking over our government, as opposed to our government setting up rules and regulations for corporate America. Corporate America is taking over the government and it's setting the rules and regulations. And we see that now with Musk, and Trump. They want corporate America to run this country, as opposed to the government controlling corporate America. They're reversing it. So
Well,
that's
well,
what's
I like to thank our audience. We're at the end of our show again. I like to thank our superstar panel in the audience and all the callers that calls in. And we're still gonna tweak our phone system for you to call in during the show. We have a couple of technical issues, but join us next Saturday. We continue discussion, and hopefully we can go through some of this legal whiplash we've been doing. So until then, everybody take care and look forward to